Here, please take it.
Thank you.
The rain hit the pavement like 1,000 tiny hammers, each drop echoing through the empty streets of Eastbrook. Amara Reed, a 10-year-old girl, rushed out of their run-down apartment, clutching their last sandwich. Her eyes fixed on the boy she had seen through their window. He was maybe her age, maybe younger. He sat hunched beneath a flickering street lamp, his clothes soaked through, his thin arms wrapped tightly around his knees. He wasn't moving, just sitting there, staring at nothing. Amara's heart clenched. She knew that look. She had seen it in the mirror on her worst days. She headed toward him with the sandwich her mother had packed for tomorrow's lunch, the only food left in the apartment until next week's paycheck. If she gave it away, she would go hungry tomorrow. But something in her chest pulled harder than her stomach ever could. The rain immediately soaked her hair and shirt, but she didn't care. She crossed the street, her bare feet slapping against the wet concrete, and stopped in front of the boy. He looked up. His eyes were hollow, rimmed with dark circles no child should have. But when he saw her, something flickered there. Hope, maybe, or just curiosity. Here, Amara said, thrusting the sandwich toward him. You look hungry. The boy stared at the sandwich like it was a miracle. His hands trembled as he reached for it, and when his fingers closed around it, Amara saw something clutched in his other hand. A threadbare blue ribbon, frayed at the edges, tied around his wrist like a lifeline. Thank you, he whispered. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in days. I'm Meli. Amara. He took a small bite, then another, his eyes never leaving hers. Why? He asked between bites. Why did you do this? Amara shrugged, water dripping from her chin. Because nobody should be alone in the rain. Eli's fingers tightened around the blue ribbon. Something in his expression shifted, hardened with a determination that seemed too old for his face. I'll remember this, he said quietly. I promise. Amara didn't know what he meant. She just nodded, turned, and ran back across the street, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. The next day, she brought him breakfast. The day after that, lunch. For 6 months, Amara carved pieces out of her own hunger to feed a boy who lived nowhere and belonged to no one. Her grades started slipping. Her mother noticed the missing food, but said nothing, too tired to fight another battle. Eli began to talk. Small things at first. How his mother had died 2 years ago. How he'd been bouncing between shelters, sleeping in doorways, running from police who wanted to put him in the system. How he kept a journal hidden in his jacket, filled with dreams he was afraid to say out loud. What kind of dreams? Amara asked one afternoon, sitting beside him on the curb. Eli's fingers traced the blue ribbon on his wrist. Dreams where I'm not invisible anymore, where I can help people the way you help me. You're not invisible to me, Amara said. Eli looked at her, and for the first time, she saw him smile. It was small, fragile, but real. One day, he said, I'm going to repay you. I don't know how yet, but I will. 3 days later, Eli vanished. Amara searched everywhere. The usual corners, the shelters, the alleyways where he sometimes hid. Nothing. Panic clawed at her chest. Had something happened? Had he finally been caught? On the third night, she found out. She'd snuck out past curfew, desperate, when she saw the police car parked outside the youth detention center. And there, through the chain-link fence, she saw him. Eli, sitting on a bench in an orange jumpsuit, his head in his hands. She ran to the fence. Eli. He looked up, his eyes red. They caught me. Said I was loitering. They're putting me in foster care. No, Amara said, her voice breaking. No, they can't. It's okay, Eli said, but his voice cracked. You've done enough. More than enough. Amara pressed her face against the cold metal. I'll bring you food. Every day. I'll find a way. Eli stood, walked to the fence, and pressed his hand against hers through the wire. I won't forget you, Amara. Ever. One day, I'll be strong enough to protect you too. The guard called his name. Eli turned, but not before Amara saw him clutch that blue ribbon one more time, his knuckles white with the force of his grip. 12 years passed like a storm, brutal and relentless. Amara became a social worker, pouring every ounce of her pain into helping kids who reminded her of Eli. She fought the system every single day, exhausted but unbroken, driven by the memory of a boy who'd promised her something she'd never believed in. Meanwhile, Eli survived, barely. Foster homes that didn't care. Jobs that paid nothing. A world that tried to crush him at every turn. But he kept the blue ribbon, kept the promise. And slowly, impossibly, he clawed his way up. Odd jobs turned into opportunities. Opportunities turned into risks. Risks turned into a business empire built on grit, obsession, and a singular, burning focus. Return to Eastbrook. Find her. Make good on a promise whispered through a chain-link fence. Now, at 28, Eli Turner stood in a conference room overlooking the very streets where he'd once starved, preparing to face the woman who'd saved his life without ever knowing she'd owned his heart ever since. The community meeting was packed. Residents crammed into folding chairs, their faces etched with suspicion and fatigue. Amara sat in the third row, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She'd seen too many developers make promises they never intended to keep. Ladies and gentlemen, the moderator said, please welcome Eli Turner, founder of Turner Development Group. Amara's breath caught. Eli stepped onto the stage, and the world tilted. She knew that face. Older, sharper, carved by years of struggle, but unmistakable. The boy from the rain. The boy with the blue ribbon. Eli's eyes swept the room and landed on her. For a fraction of a second, his composure cracked. Recognition. Longing. Something raw and unguarded that made Amara's pulse spike. Then his professional mask slid back into place. I'm here to talk about affordable housing, Eli said, his voice steady, but carrying an undercurrent that only Amara seemed to hear. Eastbrook deserves better than what it's been given. I'm proposing a development plan that prioritizes community needs over profit margins. Amara stood abruptly. Every head turned. With all due respect, Mr. Turner, we've heard this before. Developers come in, make promises, and 3 years later, rent triples and families are displaced. Elias' jaw tightened. I understand your skepticism, miss. Reed. Amara Reed. His eyes locked onto hers, and the air between them crackled with electricity. Ms. Reed, he continued, his voice softer now, I'm not like other developers. I grew up on these streets. I know what it's like to be invisible, to be forgotten. I know what it's like to suffer. This isn't business for me. It's personal. Everything's personal until the money gets involved. Amara shot back. Eli stepped off the stage, moving down the aisle toward her. People shifted uncomfortably. Then let me prove it, he said quietly, stopping just feet away. Give me a chance. Work with me. Hold me accountable. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. Up close, she could see the faint scar on his cheek, the exhaustion etched around his eyes, the way his hand kept drifting to his wrist where a blue ribbon was tied beneath his expensive watch. Why should I trust you? She whispered. Because you already did once, Eli said, his voice barely audible. And I never forgot. The meeting dissolved into chaos, but Amara barely heard it. She pushed through the crowd and out into the night air, her mind spinning. Eli followed. Amara, wait. She spun around. You left. You disappeared. And now you show up with money and power and expect me to just... What? Fall in line. I didn't have a choice, Eli said, his voice breaking. They put me in the system. I tried to find you, but I had nothing. No phone, no address, nothing. By the time I got out, you'd moved. Your mother had moved. I searched for years. And now you're back to save the day? Amara's voice dripped with sarcasm, but her eyes were wet. Now I'm back to keep a promise, Eli said. He pulled up his sleeve, revealing the blue ribbon tied around his wrist, faded but intact. You gave me hope when I had none. You gave me food when you were hungry. You saw me when I was invisible. I told you I'd repay you, Amara. Every building I've bought in this city, every business deal I've made, it's all been to bring me back here. To you. Amara's breath hitched. That's insane. Maybe, Eli admitted. But it's true. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of unspoken words. I don't need saving, Amara finally said. And I don't need your guilt money. Good, Eli said, stepping closer. Because I'm not offering charity. I'm offering partnership. You know this community. I have resources. Together, we could actually make a difference. Amara wanted to walk away. Every instinct screamed at her to protect herself, to not trust wealth, to not believe in fairy tales. But something in Eli's eyes, that same desperate hope she'd seen in a starving boy under a street lamp, made her pause. One project, she said. Prove to me you mean what you say. One housing unit. If you can do it right, without displacement, without cutting corners, then maybe we talk about more. Eli's face lit up. Deal. They worked side by side for weeks. Amara challenged every decision, questioned every expense, pushed back on every detail. Eli never fought her. He listened, adapted, learned. She saw him stay up until 3 in the morning redesigning plans to accommodate a single mother's request. She watched him turn down a lucrative offer because it would have raised rents. And slowly, terrifyingly, her walls began to crack. Late one night, they sat in Eli's office, surrounded by blueprints and coffee cups. Rain streaked the windows, echoing that night so many years ago. Why do you still wear it? Amara asked, gesturing to the ribbon on his wrist. Eli looked down at it, his expression softening. Because it reminds me of the most important moment of my life. The moment someone saw me as human. You were a kid, Amara said quietly. I just gave you a sandwich. You gave me everything, Eli corrected. He turned to face her fully. Do you know what it's like to be so hungry, so alone, that you start to wonder if you even exist? And then someone crosses the street in the rain, barefoot, just to make sure you're okay. His voice cracked. You saved my life, Amara. And I've spent every day since trying to be worthy of that kindness. Amara's throat tightened. Eli, I know this is complicated, he continued, his eyes searching hers. I know you have every reason not to trust me, but I need you to know that everything I've built, every choice I've made, it's all been to get back to you. Not because I think you owe me anything, but because you showed me what I wanted to be. Someone who sees people, someone who cares. The space between them felt charged, dangerous. Amara's hand trembled as she reached out, her fingers barely brushing his. I'm scared, she admitted. Scared that this is too good to be true. Scared that you'll leave again. Scared that I'll start to believe in this. And Eli caught her hand, holding it gently. I'm not going anywhere. Not without you. Their faces were inches apart. Amara could feel his breath, see the vulnerability in his eyes, the years of longing etched into every line of his face. This is crazy, she whispered. I know, Eli whispered back. And then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was years of longing, of promises kept in secret, of two broken people finding their way back to each other through the wreckage. Amara's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Eli's arms wrapped around her like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Amara rested her forehead against his. This doesn't fix everything, she said softly. I know, Eli replied. But it's a start. For the first time in years, Amara let herself hope. The morning after shattered everything. Amara woke to headlines screaming across her phone. Turner Development under investigation for prior ethics violations. Her stomach dropped. She scrolled frantically. Allegations of bribery in a previous city. Questionable land deals. A former partner claiming Eli had built his empire on exploitation. Her hand shook as she dialed his number. It went straight to voicemail. By noon, the community was in an uproar. People she'd worked with for years looked at her with betrayal in their eyes. You vouched for him, Mrs. Patterson said, her voice cold. You told us to trust him. I'm handling it, Amara said, but doubt clawed at her insides. Eli finally called at 3 in the afternoon. Amara, I can explain. Then explain, she snapped. Are the allegations true? Silence. Then, it's complicated. That's not an answer. The partner they quoted? He wanted to cut corners, displace families to maximize profit. I refused. He retaliated by spreading lies. The investigation cleared me, but the damage was done. That's why I left that city. That's why I came back here. Why didn't you tell me? Amara demanded. Because I was afraid, Eli admitted, his voice raw. Afraid you'd look at me the way you're looking at me right now. Afraid you'd think I was just another corrupt developer. I wanted to prove myself first. I wanted you to see who I really am before the past could poison it. Amara closed her eyes. I can't do this, Eli. My credibility is on the line. The community trusts me, and I just handed you that trust on a silver platter. Then let me prove it, Eli said desperately. Let me show everyone exactly who I am. Publicly. Transparently. Ow! Give me 2 weeks. Please. Amara wanted to say no. Wanted to protect herself, her reputation, her heart. But something in his voice, that same determined promise from the boy under the street lamp, made her hesitate. 2 weeks, she said. But if you're lying to me, Eli, I swear. I'm not, he interrupted. I swear on the ribbon. On everything we've been through. I'm not lying. The line went dead. The next 13 days were agony. Eli went silent, his office dark, his phone off. Amara fielded angry calls, hostile meetings, accusatory stares. She barely slept, second-guessing every decision, wondering if she'd been a fool to believe in fairy tales. On day 14, Eli called a press conference. Amara stood in the back of the room, arms crossed, her heart in her throat. Eli took the stage, flanked by lawyers, community leaders, and financial advisors. 2 weeks ago, he began, my integrity was questioned. Today, I'm here to answer those questions fully and publicly. He pulled up financial records, tax documents, emails, everything. He walked through every allegation methodically, point by point, showing proof of his refusal to participate in corrupt practices, evidence of the smear campaign, testimonies from families he'd helped in other cities. Then he did something no one expected. I'm also announcing the Crimson Ribbon Initiative, Eli said, his voice steady. Named after a promise I made 20 years ago to someone who showed me kindness when I had nothing. A screen behind him lit up with plans. Affordable housing developments, youth mentorship programs, scholarship funds, job training centers. Every detail designed not just to help, but to empower. This initiative will be governed by an independent board, Eli continued, including community leaders, financial auditors, and advocacy groups. Every decision will be transparent, every dollar accounted for, and the chair of that board will be Amara Reed, if she'll accept. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Community members gasped. Amara stood frozen, her mind reeling. Eli's eyes found hers across the crowded room. I told you I'd keep my promise, he said quietly, though the microphone carried his words to everyone. I told you I'd repay you. This is how. Amara's vision blurred. She pushed through the crowd, ignoring the cameras, ignoring everyone, until she stood in front of him. You're giving me control? She asked, her voice shaking. You're the only person I trust to do this right, Eli said. This was never about me being the hero, Amara. It was about making sure you had the resources to be the hero you've always been. Tears slipped down her cheeks. You could have told me. I know, Eli said. I'm sorry. I was so afraid of losing you again that I almost lost you anyway. Amara looked at the plans on the screen, at the faces of community members slowly shifting from suspicion to cautious hope, at the man standing in front of her who'd kept a promise across 2 decades. Okay, she whispered. Okay, let's do this. The room exploded into applause, but Amara barely heard it. Eli pulled her into his arms, and for the first time in weeks, she let herself breathe. I love you, Eli whispered into her hair. I've loved you since I was 10 years old, sitting in the rain, and you crossed the street barefoot just to see if I was okay. Amara pulled back enough to look at him. I love you too, she said. But if you ever keep secrets from me again, I won't, Eli promised. No more secrets. Just us building something real. She kissed him, right there in front of the cameras and the community and the world, sealing a promise that had started with a sandwich and a blue ribbon and had somehow survived everything life had thrown at it. The Crimson Ribbon Initiative launched 3 months later. The first housing units opened to families who'd been on waiting lists for years. Scholarship recipients got acceptance letters to colleges they'd only dreamed of. Youth mentorship programs connected at-risk kids with professionals who actually cared. And through it all, Amara and Eli worked side by side, building not just a community, but a legacy. But they weren't finished yet. 6 months into the initiative, a new threat emerged. Marcus Webb, a rival developer with deep pockets and deeper connections, began buying properties adjacent to the Crimson Ribbon developments. His intentions were clear. Wait for Eli's projects to increase property values, then swoop in with luxury condos that would price out the very families they were trying to help. He's going to destroy everything, Amara said, pacing Eli's office. Every family we've housed, Every kid in our programs, they'll be displaced within 5 years. Eli studied the property maps, his jaw tight. Not if we buy the properties first. With what money? We're already stretched thin. Then we get creative, Eli said. He turned to her, that familiar determination blazing in his eyes. We crowdfund. We partner with nonprofits. We ask the community to invest in itself. Amara stared at him. That's risky. If we fail, we won't. Eli interrupted. Because we're not doing this alone. We never were. They launched the campaign the next day. Amara spoke at community centers, churches, schools, anywhere people would listen. She told them about the threat, about the choice they faced, let outside interests dictate their future, or invest in the community that had raised them. The response was overwhelming. Small donations poured in. $5, $10, $20. A grandmother on a fixed income sent $50. A teenager donated his birthday money. Local businesses contributed. National nonprofits partnered. And slowly, impossibly, they began buying properties. Marcus Webb fought back. He lobbied city officials, spread rumors about financial mismanagement, threatened legal action. The pressure was relentless. One night, Amara found Eli on the roof of one of their housing developments, staring out at the city lights. Hey, she said softly, sitting beside him. I'm tired, Eli admitted. I've been fighting my whole life, Amara. Sometimes I wonder if it'll ever be enough. Amara took his hand. Do you remember what you told me? That I gave you hope when you had none. Eli nodded. You did the same for me, Amara said. I was so angry at the world, so exhausted from fighting systems that didn't care. And then you came back. You showed me that one person can make a difference. That promises matter. That kindness isn't weakness. Eli's eyes glistened. I don't want to let you down. You couldn't if you tried, Amara said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small and frayed. The blue ribbon. The original one from 20 years ago. You kept this. All these years. But I kept something too. She unfolded a piece of paper, yellowed with age. Words in a child's handwriting. I'll repay you. I promise. Eli. You wrote this in one of your journals, Amara said. You gave it to me the day before you disappeared. I've carried it with me every day since. Eli's face crumpled. I thought you'd forgotten. Never, Amara whispered. You were the reason I became a social worker. Because I wanted to be for other kids what you showed me was possible. Someone who keeps their promises. Eli pulled her close, and they sat there in the darkness. Two people bound by a promise that had transformed into something neither could have imagined. The next morning, they received news. The final property purchases had gone through. They'd secured enough land to create a buffer around the Crimson Ribbon developments. Marcus Webb's plans were effectively blocked. The community celebrated. News outlets covered it as a David and Goliath victory. But for Amara and Eli, it was something more. Proof that when people choose to see each other, to invest in each other, the impossible becomes possible. 3 years after the initiative launched, Eli took Amara back to where it all began. The street lamp still flickered, though the neighborhood looked different now. Safer, brighter, hopeful. I have something to ask you, Eli said, his hand trembling slightly. Amara's heart raced. Eli. He dropped to one knee, pulling out a small box. Inside, a simple ring with a blue stone the exact color of the ribbon. If you're loving this story, don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for the next part of this incredible journey. 20 years ago, you saw a starving kid and chose kindness over comfort. Eli said, his voice thick with emotion. You gave me a sandwich, but you gave me so much more. You gave me hope, purpose, a reason to become someone worth believing in. You've been my guiding star ever since, Amara. The reason I fight, the reason I dream, the reason I'm standing here today. I don't just want to keep my promise to you. I want to make new promises. Every day, for the rest of our lives. Will you marry me? Amara's tears fell freely. Yes, she whispered. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Eli slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her. And somewhere in the distance, the street lamp stopped flickering, casting steady light across the place where two lives had first intertwined. They married 6 months later in the community center they'd helped build. Families they'd housed attended. Kids from their mentorship programs served as ushers. Mrs. Patterson, who'd once doubted Eli, baked the cake. The ceremony was simple but profound, witnessed by a community that had learned the power of collective hope. As they danced their first dance, Eli whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." "Thank you for keeping your promise," Amara whispered back. The Crimson Ribbon Initiative continued to grow. It expanded to other cities, other communities, always keeping the same core principle: empower, don't exploit. See people, don't use them. Keep promises, don't break them. And every year, on the anniversary of that rainy night, Eli and Amara returned to the street lamp. They'd bring sandwiches and distribute them to anyone who